Mason Hennings, welcome to the Preconstruction podcast.
Hey, happy to be here, Gareth. Thanks for having me.
Looking forward to this one. There's going to be some serious crack about big data in this one, folks. If anybody doesn't know Mason, he is estimator at Traylor Bros down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. But let me tell you something now. He is way more than an estimator. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about machine learning, AI capabilities within construction, and how to leverage big data in pre-construction as well. And not only that, construction, and how it drives and enhances accuracy, reduces risks, and can create competitive advantage across the US for various projects. So let's start at the start, Mason. You studied construction engineering technology in Louisiana. Tell me a little bit about why you chose that degree and what it was like.
Right. I chose construction engineering technology because it afforded me the quickest path to the practical field. I didn't really have much interest in pursuing design work with an engineering firm, and I just knew that I wanted to build really big stuff, and Traylor is one of the best places for me to do that.
Big time shout out to Traylor. And hey, let's be honest, you went from that into the field for 3.5 years and then 3.5 years of estimating. But part of your field exposure was the Howard Franklin Bridge project, JV with Archer Western, 864 million. What a way to cut your teeth. What a project. What did you learn there?
Absolutely. The lessons learned could fill a book, but the high level is that the team makes the dream. When we have projects as large and complex as this, it's less about your individual performance and more about how much or how well you can collaborate and cooperate with many moving parts while also keeping track of them all. So as the substructures field engineer, we did a lot of testing. We spent a lot of time on the forefront with some of our seal slab designs and some of our formwork approaches to really make sure that we had it down pat. The piers are fairly typical. However, there's over 113 of them. So if we're going to do it once, we need to be able to do it repeatedly. And going through that process and refining that and using the data that we gathered was monumental in positioning us for success there.
Brilliant. What a project. Incredible. And like most people in the field, family started arriving. The wonderful Ellie Catherine, your daughter was born, and you decided to make the move into pre-construction and estimating. And you've been doing it now for 3.5 years. But one of your biggest kind of challenges in what you're looking at right now is machine learning and AI and the capabilities. Run us through that a little bit and give us an idea of what the capabilities are and what you're doing right now.
Sure. So a lot of talk has been had about AI, and it is this mystical term that means many different things to many different people. For our intents and purposes, we are using machine learning to analyze large data sets to find what's typical. We are looking at gaining insights to things that we might have missed that might only be apparent within the big picture, so to speak. And we can use these typical frameworks to then apply it to forward-facing work, where we can preliminarily flag atypical clauses, atypical quotes, atypical plans, atypical specs, and having a sort of second check on the work that we're already doing.
Brilliant. And then you mentioned it there. I mean, everyone thinks that AI, machine learning, is going to be a silver bullet. It's just not the case. You know, you've got to have everything in check. At Traylor Bros, how did you go about your early data journey? And what advice would you give to people that are maybe saying, "Oh, AI, ML, I'm gonna have to start this journey right now"?
Right. There's never been a better time to immerse yourself and to learn these tools, and they're only improving daily. One of the first things I noticed when I really started immersing myself in this work is that construction is simultaneously data rich, but insight poor. And when we can harness all of the data that we're already creating to draw meaningful and actionable insights, you're giving your existing staff superpowers, right? And that's really the key here is that AI isn't replacing estimators. It gives them superpowers by turning their hindsight into foresight.
Yeah, I like that. I like that expression, hindsight and the foresight. Tell me now that the pain points that you go through, and a lot of the companies that are listening, or their estimators or pre-con managers that are listening, what are the main pain points that they're going through, and what are some of the solutions that you've come up with?
The primary thing that I've seen in several places is that we aren't using this data in an efficient manner. We're getting all of these subcontractor quotes and then we just file them away in the project folder. We're putting together all of these estimates and then we're storing them away in a network drive and never visiting them again. We're generating weekly cost reports and so on and so forth. And so we have all of this data in various silos, and you get a tremendous value by defining and connecting and bridging this data to get a better picture of the overall context of the work that you're actually doing. So to put that in a practical example, right? If you've been collecting subcontractor quotes for 20 years, you've got a tremendous data set. But how do you go from saved PDFs or even worse, printed sheets that have been stored in a file cabinet and then use that in an actionable way? And there's a couple different ways you can go about that. The easiest one is OCR, optical character recognition. That helps a lot, but for a lot of this hard stored data, like these printed sheets or the dreaded PDF as a image without embedded text, you don't have much choice other than manual data entry. So there's a tremendous effort up front to transform your existing data into a usable format. This can be in Excel, although Excel's not a database. It can be helpful for some smaller companies. We found a lot of success in Access and then later Power BI to really give us the power to look at data of this scale and draw actionable insights.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, you mentioned the old treasure hunt when it comes to data, and it can be difficult as well. I mean, not being able to get the data, then display it, and the kind of initial heavy lifting of data entry. I mean, you can get companies to do that. You can go out and hire data entry people. But once that's in there, then it's there forever. It will never be lost, and the heavy lifting's done. Because so sometimes you're better off starting from scratch. Because a lot of people, if I'm right, they start from scratch and they do the projects that they're currently on and the project they have further on. But it's a past project and a past experience that you need to capture. Once you do that, what does that help with, and how do you go about making it accessible and being able to bring it up pretty quickly, all this data?
Right. So the most important key to having data that is actionable is properly structuring how you're defining that data. So within an Excel sheet, you have less control over this, but within a relational database, you're able to assign subcontractor IDs, you're able to assign project IDs, and all of these tables combine multitudes of data that then stacks on itself to deliver actionable insights. And as a practical example, we can use historical subcontractor quotes or historical production information from our cost reports in order to accurately predict plug pricing for future projects for subs. We are able to look at cost report data and predict future production rates with a measurable confidence interval. A lot of production rates in estimating almost consider themselves to be opinions, but people forget that a production rate is a measured probability. You you have all of these different aspects. You have your crew size, you have your equipment, the site conditions, but being able to combine each of these in their own way and being able to see the influences that, for example, weather could have on the site conditions, that could have on your equipment productivity, that then influences your crew productivity. So it's drawing meaningful relationships between these different points and trying to figure out how they interact with each other. The ultimate goal that I think we're trying to pursue here is that we need to be able to combine this multi-dimensional construction data through machine learning to try to really untangle these relationships. So by different tests, we can isolate a independent and dependent variable with A/B testing or random forests and really see the actual impact that, I don't know, a more humid day might have.
Wow, that's interesting. Now, talk to us about that, about the A/B testing. I mean, how does that work, and how do you, is that something that you're doing at Taylor Bros at the moment? How successful is it, and have you got it working nicely?
Right, this is still in its infancy, and we're seeing promising results. The traditional statistic methods like linear regression assume a lot of straightforward relationships between variables. So, for example, if you add one more worker to a crew, your productivity increases by X%. But the construction reality is actually much more complex. And using AI to crunch on these large data sets, we can identify nonlinear relationships that humans often miss, like how productivity might actually decrease after adding the seventh worker, or how your temperature impacts your concrete work differently at various humidity levels. And machine learning can detect these complex interdependencies across dozens of variables simultaneously, like how certain equipment combinations can perform drastically better on specific soil types, but only when temperatures are within a particular range. Some of these are intuitive, like your equipment doesn't work well when it rains. But these insights aren't just interesting data points, they're competitive advantages that can transform how you estimate. So while your competitors might rely on rules of thumb, you can use this data to bid confidently. And you can bid with the confidence of knowing exactly how these complex factors on projects matching your specific parameters play out.
Brilliant. And then how at the moment with Taylor Bros, I mean, how long have you been working on this? And then with all of this brilliant kind of data set, data accuracy that you have, are we talking about getting within 5, 6, 7% of the actual cost?
We know this in the back end once we actually compare estimate versus actual, but we've seen that there's a noticeable shift in how we approach jobs. There's this idea of like a rule of thumb for a production rate from an experienced estimator that they just know intuitively. And they'll say, oh, well, we want to be a little bit conservative, and they'll adjust it, downward. We want to be more aggressive, and so they'll adjust it another way. But what we're really doing is defining what conservative and aggressive actually means in the greater context of all of your historical production. So a 15% reduction or increase, depending on your data set, could be exactly what you need. Or if you don't understand the context of where you've been historically with those production rates, you could be sinking your ship before you even leave the port.
Yeah, yeah. And listen, anybody I speak to that's thinking about data or thinking about trying to build the data or leverage the data, it's always a really, really difficult kind of task to start. We talked about the start of it there about gathering the data, and then prioritizing it, and then implementing it. It's what are the biggest ROIs that you have seen at Taylor Bros from all the hard work that you've done over the last 3.5 years?
The biggest ROIs that I've seen aren't coming necessarily from the site, but they result from the sheer amount of man hours that you're saving throughout your pre-construction project progress throughout your operational handoff. There, we've developed and streamlined workflows to try to minimize time spent doing manual data entry. We're trying to minimize redundant reporting. And by systematically approaching your workflows this way, the biggest ROIs we've seen is just by saving time with our extremely talented staff here and letting them focus on what they're best at, which is developing innovative solutions to complex problems.
Brilliant, brilliant. And I think that's the one solution that everyone's looking for. I mean, we're losing too many people out of pre-construction and estimating just because of the sheer pressure that we're putting people under. And it allows you to do the high level stuff that you're good at. And as you say, you learned when you were out doing the Howard Franklin Bridge project. So, I mean, that's the ideal. What's the next stage for you? I mean, what are the things that excite you, get you up in the morning when you think about big data, when you think about machine learning, AI, when you think about pre-construction on these huge projects?
Right. What truly excites me and what I really feel a deep passion for is revisiting and reimagining what pre-construction looks like across America with the modern tools that we have today. We have so many companies that are fundamentally estimating the same way they were estimating 10, 15 years ago. Their software tools might have been updated, but their core workflows remain the same. And after a while, you end up with a system that is a patchwork of old processes that have been revamped and updated to sort of work with this new thing that we're doing. And that snowballs into a lot of inefficiency that's nearly invisible until you try to concept like, until you try to go through your workflows in some other way. So taking each step of your processes and questioning why are we doing this? How could we do it better? And where can we automate the the pain points is a tremendous first start for anybody that's looking to try to start implementing this sort of thing.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's a constant battle. Do you pick a solution, a one point solution to just fix one thing within your workflow or process, or do you pick a off the shelf that runs through everything and have your whole team change completely how they go about pre-construction and estimating? What was the biggest lesson learned for you so far with Traylor Bros and making that change?
Change is hard. People have there are much more experienced people who have doing this who have been doing this longer than I've been alive, and their experience is valuable and their opinions are meaningful. Those same people are more likely to be resistant to change because if it's not broke, then why should we fix it? Which is a completely valid point. And so trying to win over these individuals and sort of let them see the light of how we could be doing things is one of the bigger challenges that I've seen. But on the other end, I've had some of these same individuals provide some of the best feedback and the best improvements to some of the tools that we're doing. So including these experienced individuals is going to become increasingly more important as our construction industry undergoes this generational shift that we're currently going through. Through the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to be seeing a lot of the old guard transfer into retirement, and I don't think that the industry is prepared for what that loss of experience looks like. And so by taking these proactive steps to not only standardize your data, but also standardize your processes, you should be facilitating a culture of knowledge transfer, knowledge capture, and continuous improvement in these domains.
Yeah, but that's not always easy, Mason, as you know, knowledge retention. And is it a case of like putting it into some sort of database? I mean, downloading someone with 35, 40 years of experience, downloading that experience onto an Excel sheet isn't easy. How do you go about it? I mean, is it kind of through interviews? Is it through like it's really difficult. Have you got a silver bullet for doing it? Because it's a big challenge in the industry.
100%. And it's one of the things that I've been working on pretty intently the last few weeks. What I've developed is a system of iterative development through standardization. And what that means is that whenever, for example, when we're creating a work plan, we've made work plans hundreds of times before. Many different people have done these. And so instead of starting from scratch each time, we should draw on the knowledge of the work plans that we've done previously. We don't need to take them and copy them whole cloth, but we need to at least reference them and see what works and what doesn't work. There's a lot of time lost, especially at the beginning of project startup, where you've mobilized your field engineers and you've got them in the office ordering materials, doing work plans, creating diagrams and whatnot, and they're starting from scratch. And there's really no reason to start with a blank slate when we've done a lot of these things many times before. And so we can draw on these past work products as data points to influence how we can do things in the future. And how I've been working through knowledge capture in terms of pre-construction specifically is a crew and equipment standardization like workflow. And so essentially, when we have an item of work that we've done many times before, we've done that item of work with different crew configurations. So if we can, and this is another example of bridging those data silos, right? So if we have a database of all of our estimates that we've constructed, and we have a separate database of all of our cost reports. So we have our estimated versus actual, but they never talk to each other. So what we can do is we can take the cost reports and then compare them to our estimates to see things like crew configurations. We can see what kind of equipment they were using. We can see the consumable materials and the small tools and stuff that were purchased. And we can use all of that to influence how we are constructing our future estimates. And this goes back to not starting with a blank slate. We need to start with what we've done, what we've proven works, and then start there. And so as a method of institutional knowledge capture, you see that experience shine through when you start standardizing these sort of approaches, because you'll have a specific person who maybe they're your power driving person, right? And they always do their power driving bid items this way, right? If you can take those and you can standardize them and this, well, that's the way we did power driving, and then use that as a starting point moving forward, you're inadvertently through process capturing a lot of that institutional knowledge that would otherwise just be walking out the door.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And there, I mean, we talk about the substructures that you were on during that huge JV with Archer Western. I mean, for you to be able to go in and standardize a workflow or on how to do substructures, I mean, it's seriously invaluable. And is that why diversity is so important within pre-construction teams and estimating teams?
I think so. Absolutely. The diversity in our backgrounds and experience is really what empowers us to take on multiple perspectives and to build on our previous points. Each opinion and each intuitive idea is a data point, and what we should be striving to do is combine these and refine them to pursue optimal outcomes. And so just as these diverse opinions are very important data points, so too is our historical data, how we've done things in the past. And so by taking these and combining them, you're building on that measured confidence that you've established.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about. It's having that confidence, de-risking, having that confidence that when you go to deliver a bid or a project for a client, you know you've done everything possible and you're going to be within 2 or 3%. Listen, Mason, this has been incredible. Really, really do appreciate your insight. I can feel a part two coming on, similar to the end of the picture. The data side is just, it's so interesting. Everyone's at different stages of the data cycle. Some people haven't even thought about it, and God help them in 4 or 5 years if they haven't. And other people are kind of halfway through to towards the end. So really interesting. If there is anybody that's listening to you now and they want to reach out and say, listen, Mason makes some very valid points, I would like to kind of follow up with them with a few extra questions. Where's the best place to get you?
Right. So if you guys want to reach out and sort of talk about any of these ideas, reach out to me on LinkedIn, Mason Hennings. I'd love to hear from you all. One thing before we close out, I just wanted to touch on that machine learning is going to be turning your project history into a record of what happened into a probability distribution of what can happen. And the question isn't whether AI will transform construction estimating. It's whether your company will be leading that transformation or trying to catch up.
Love it. Love it. And we will close with that, Mason. Again, thank you so much for your time. I will put the LinkedIn profile link below. So if anybody wants to reach out to Mason, feel free to do so. And I look forward to catching up with you for part two very soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gareth.